I'm going to tell you something embarrassing. I'm a physicist. I've calculated quantum probabilities, worked on atomic bombs, taught at Caltech, and I spent years being confused about mirrors. Not in a, curious way. In a this doesn't make any damn sense way. I'd stand there moving my left hand, watching the mirror me move their right hand, and I'd think, why right? Why not up? What's special about left-right? Then one day, I'm not kidding, I'm watching a kid play with a toy car, and the kid holds it up to a mirror, and the car doesn't look backwards to him. And that's when I realized, I've been asking the wrong question my entire life. The mirror never changed. I changed. Something inside my perception flipped, not outside. And understanding what flipped is maybe the most clarifying thing I've ever learned about being human. Now, you've lived with mirrors your entire life, but you've probably never understood what they actually do. And that misunderstanding reveals something profound about how you experience everything. Most people think this is a quirky physics question. It's not. It's about the invisible ways your mind constructs meaning, creates perspective, and builds your sense of self from assumptions you never examine. Here's the core pain. You've been told reality is objective and straightforward, but then you encounter something as simple as a mirror, and suddenly the rules seem arbitrary. Why left-right but not up-down? It feels like the universe is gaslighting you. That confusion? It's pointing to something deeper. Your brain constantly builds models of reality, and when those models clash with each other, you feel disoriented without knowing why. This video will show you that mirrors don't flip anything. Your mind does. And once you understand exactly what your mind is doing and why, you'll never see perception the same way. You'll gain a tool for recognizing when you're imposing human-centered assumptions on a neutral universe. This isn't just about mirrors, it's about learning to catch yourself in the act of creating reality. Every other explanation either gets lost in technical jargon or hand-waves the answer. I'm going to walk you through the actual mechanism, using your body, your imagination, and simple thought experiments until you feel the moment when the flip happens inside your own mind. No tricks, no shortcuts, just clarity. Let me take you back to that moment with the kid and the toy car because it's important. I was at a friend's house and their son, maybe 7 years old, was playing with this little red sports car. He was making engine noises, driving it along the coffee table, the whole thing. Then he noticed the mirror on the wall, and he held the car up to it. He looked at the reflection, looked at the car in his hand, looked back at the reflection, and then he said something that stopped me cold. It's the same car. Now, to me, standing there watching, the car in the mirror looked backwards. The front was facing the opposite direction. If there was writing on the side, it would have been reversed. But to this kid, it was the same car. He wasn't seeing a flip. He was seeing his car reflected. And I realized in that moment that the flip I was seeing, the reversal I was so convinced was real, was something I was adding. I was bringing an expectation to the mirror that the kid wasn't bringing yet. So I got curious. I asked him, "Does the car look different in the mirror?" And he thought about it for a second and said, "Yeah, it's over there instead of here." That's it. That's all he saw, a positional difference. The car was in his hand, and there was also a car image behind the glass. But he wasn't seeing left become right. He wasn't confused about directions. He was just seeing a reflection. Now, when I held up my hand to the mirror, I immediately saw left and right swap. When I raised my left hand, the mirror me raised what looked like their right hand, and I'd been seeing that my whole life, taking it for granted as something the mirror does. But watching this kid, I realized he wasn't making that translation yet. He hadn't learned to project personhood onto the reflection, to imagine it as another being with its own left and right. And that's when it hit me. The flip happens when you turn the reflection into a person. When you see the image in the mirror and automatically think, that's someone facing me. Because when someone faces you in real life, when you stand face to face with another person, and they raise their right hand, you see it on your left side. That's just perspective. Two people facing each other have opposite orientations. Their rights and lefts are reversed relative to each other. But here's the thing. When you do that with a mirror, you're comparing two different things. You're comparing your actual left hand with what you imagine is the reflection's right hand. You're attributing leftness and rightness to an image that doesn't actually have those properties. An image doesn't have a left side, it's just light arranged in a pattern. So let me take you through this step by step, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's glorious. Imagine you're standing in a room, and there's another person standing across from you, facing you. You raise your left hand. From your perspective, your hand is on the left side of your body. From their perspective, looking at you, your hand appears on their right side. That makes sense, right? You're facing opposite directions. Your left is their right. There's no mystery here. Nobody says, "Whoa, that person got flipped." You just say, "We're facing each other." Now imagine that person is standing behind a window, a big glass window. You're on one side, they're on the other. You raise your left hand. They raise their right hand. Same thing as before. You're facing each other through glass. Still no flip. Still just two people with opposite orientations. Now, and this is where it gets interesting, make that window reflective. Turn it into a mirror. You're still standing there, and now instead of seeing through to another room, you see your own reflection. You raise your left hand, and the reflection raises what looks like its right hand. But here's the critical question. What changed? The geometry didn't change. The light paths didn't change. You're still looking at an image of someone facing you. The only thing that changed is your interpretation. With the window, you knew it was another person. With the mirror, you know it's you, but you still interpret it as a person facing you, as another being with its own perspective. And that's where the trouble starts, because it's not another being. It's not a person inside the mirror with their own left and right. It's a pattern of light. But your brain doesn't see it that way. Your brain sees a face, and when your brain sees a face, it immediately assigns personhood, perspective, agency. It creates a mental model of another self. Here's what your brain does automatically without asking permission. It imagines you walking forward into the mirror, passing through the glass, and then turning around to face back out. Like you went through a doorway and turned 180 degrees. And when you imagine that rotation, you rotate around your vertical axis, the axis running from your head to your feet, because that's how you turn around in real life. You don't do a cartwheel. You don't roll sideways. You pivot on your feet, spinning around the up-down axis. And when you mentally rotate yourself that way, 180 degrees around the vertical, your left and right swap, but your up and down stay the same. That mental rotation is where the flip comes from, not from the mirror, from your imagination. Let me prove it to you with a thought experiment. Stand up right now, or imagine standing up. Face an imaginary mirror. Raise your left hand. The mirror you raise is what looks like their right hand. You see the flip. Now, I want you to imagine a different rotation. Instead of spinning around your vertical axis like you're turning around, imagine rotating around your left-right axis, like you're doing a cartwheel or a front flip. Imagine your head going down and your feet going up, rotating forward until you're upside down. If you rotated into the mirror that way, what would change? Your left would still be on the left. Your right would still be on the right. But your head would be where your feet were, and your feet would be where your head was. Up and down would be flipped, not left and right. The mirror didn't change. The reflection didn't change. The only thing that changed was which axis you used to imagine rotating yourself into the mirror. And depending on which axis you choose, different directions appear to flip. Now try another one. Imagine rotating around your front-back axis, like you're a rotisserie chicken, rolling sideways. If you did that rotation into the mirror, you'd end up lying on your side, and from that orientation, the mirror, you wouldn't look flipped at all in certain ways. The point is, the flip isn't a property of the mirror, it's a property of the mental rotation you're performing. And here's the beautiful, strange thing. You don't choose that rotation consciously. Your brain does it automatically. It's so fast, so deeply wired, that you don't even notice it's happening. You look in the mirror and instantly, in a fraction of a second, your brain says, "That's me," turned around, and it picks the vertical axis because that's the axis you use to navigate the world. Think about it. When you turn around in real life, you rotate around your vertical axis. When someone calls your name from behind, you spin around that axis to face them. When you walk through a doorway and want to go back, you rotate around that axis. Gravity holds you upright. Your head stays up, your feet stay down, and left and right swap every time you turn. You've done this rotation thousands and thousands of times. It's built into your motor memory, your spatial reasoning, your sense of how bodies move through space. So when your brain sees a face facing you, it immediately models it as a person who rotated around their vertical axis to face me, even if that face is your own. Even if it's just a reflection, the brain doesn't stop to ask whether this is a real person or an image, it just runs the model. And the model says, vertical rotation, left-right swap, up-down stays the same. That's why mirrors seem to flip left and right, but not up and down, not because of anything the mirror is doing, because of the specific mental rotation your brain automatically performs. Now, let me tell you about what the mirror actually does, because this is where physics comes in, and it's going to blow your mind with how simple it is. A mirror reverses depth. That's it. That's the only thing it does. It flips front and back, not left and right, not up and down, just front and back, in and out, near and far. Here's how it works. When light bounces off your face, it travels toward the mirror in straight lines. Photons leave your nose, your eyes, your forehead. Every point on your face is sending out light. That light hits the mirror, and the mirror reflects it back. The angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. If light hits the mirror at a 30-degree angle, it bounces off at a 30-degree angle on the other side. Perfect, predictable, no tricks. Now, when that reflected light reaches your eyes, your brain interprets it as coming from behind the mirror. If you're standing 1 meter in front of the mirror, the image appears to be 1 meter behind the mirror. Your brain traces the light rays backward in straight lines, and those lines converge at a point behind the reflective surface. That's called a virtual image. It's not really there. No light is actually behind the mirror, but it looks like it's there because of the way the light paths work out. So here's the key. The image behind the mirror is the same distance behind the mirror as you are in front of it. If you're 3 feet away, the image looks like it's 3 feet deep. The mirror has taken the dimension of depth, the front-to-back axis, and reversed it. Points that were closer to the mirror on your side appear farther from the mirror on the image side. Points that were farther away appear closer. Front becomes back. Back becomes front. And that's it. That is the only transformation the mirror performs. Everything else, all the left-right confusion, comes from how you interpret that reversed depth. Let me give you a concrete example. Take a piece of paper and write a word on it. Let's say you write the word mirror in big letters. Now hold that paper up facing you. You see mirror, nice and clear. Now turn the paper around so the writing faces the mirror. What do you see in the reflection? You see the word backwards. R, O-R-R-I-M. Why did that happen? Did the mirror flip the letters left to right? No, you flipped the paper front to back. You physically rotated it 180 degrees around the vertical axis so that the writing, which was facing you, now faces the mirror. You reversed its depth. The surface that was facing toward you is now facing away from you, toward the mirror. And the mirror is just showing you that reversed surface. It's like a rubber stamp. When you carve a stamp, the letters are reversed on the stamp itself. When you press the stamp onto paper, the image comes out reversed again, which makes it readable. The stamp has to be backwards for the print to be forward. The mirror is showing you the stamp, the surface that's actually facing it, and that surface is backwards because you turned it backwards when you held it up. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Take that same piece of paper with mirror written on it, and this time, don't turn it around. Just hold it up facing you and look at its reflection in the mirror while looking past the paper. The reflection shows the back side of the paper, the blank side. There's no text visible because the text is facing you, not the mirror. But what if the paper was transparent? What if you wrote on a clear sheet of plastic? Now hold it up facing you. You see mirror correctly. Look at it in the mirror. You still see mirror correctly because you're seeing through the transparent sheet to the text, which is facing you. The mirror shows the back of the sheet, but the text is visible through it, and it hasn't been flipped because you didn't flip the sheet. Okay, now write mirror on the transparent sheet and then turn it around so the writing faces the mirror. Now, what do you see in the reflection? The text looks backwards. Why? Because you reversed the sheet's depth. The writing, which was facing forward, now faces backward, and you're viewing it from behind. You're seeing the back side of each letter. This is what I mean when I say the mirror only reverses depth. It shows you the surface that faces it. If you turn something around, if you reverse its front and back, the mirror will show you that reversed surface. But the mirror itself didn't do the reversing. You did. The mirror is just being honest. Now let's get back to you, standing in front of the mirror, looking at your reflection. You haven't physically turned yourself around. You're still facing the mirror. So why does it look flipped? Because of the mental rotation I talked about earlier. You're imagining yourself turned around, even though you haven't actually turned around. You're comparing your actual body, facing forward, with your left hand on your left side, with an imaginary version of yourself that's been rotated 180 degrees around the vertical axis. And when you do that imaginary rotation, your left becomes your right. But here's the thing. That imaginary rotation is just one possibility. You could imagine rotating around a different axis, and then different directions would appear flipped. The mirror doesn't force you to imagine any particular rotation. Your brain chooses the vertical rotation because it's the most familiar, the most natural, the one that matches how you actually move through the world. Let me tell you what happens when you actually lie on your side and look in a mirror, because I tried this, and it's wonderful. I lay down on my left side on the floor, propped my head up on my hand, and looked at a mirror on the wall. And suddenly the flip changed. It didn't look like left and right were reversed anymore. It looked like up and down were reversed. My head, which was on the left side of my body, appeared in the mirror on the right side of the mirror me's body. But the top of my head, which was pointing toward the ceiling, still appeared to point toward the ceiling in the reflection. Why did this happen? Because I changed my orientation relative to gravity, and my brain changed which rotation it imagined. When I'm lying on my side, my brain doesn't model the mirror me as upright and facing me. It models it as lying on the opposite side, and to get from my orientation to that orientation, you'd rotate around a different axis, around the front-back axis instead of the up-down axis. And when you rotate around that axis, different directions swap. This blew my mind because it proved that the flip isn't objective. It's not a property of the mirror or even of the reflection. It's a property of my mental model, of the story I'm telling about how I could move from where I am to where the reflection appears to be. And that story changes depending on context, on my orientation, on which rotation feels most natural given how I'm positioned. So let's dig deeper into this idea of left and right, because it's stranger than you think. Left and right are not like up and down. Up and down are defined by the earth. Down is the direction gravity pulls. Up is the opposite direction. These are absolute, objective. If you and I are standing in the same room, we agree on which way is up and which way is down, no matter where we're positioned or which direction we're facing. But left and right, those depend entirely on your body. Your left is the direction of your left hand. Your right is the direction of your right hand. If you turn around, your left and right turn with you. They're relative to your orientation. And here's the really weird part. Left and right are symmetrical on your body. You have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs, arranged in a mirror image pattern across the midline of your body. If you draw a vertical line down the center of your face, the left side is basically a reflection of the right side. Not perfectly, but close enough. But your top and bottom? Not symmetrical at all. Your head is nothing like your feet. Your mouth is nothing like your knees. Your body has a built-in asymmetry along the up-down axis. You're directional. You have a front and a back, a top and a bottom. And these are not interchangeable. This is important because it explains why you use your body to define left and right, but not up and down. Up and down are given to you by the world. Left and right are given to you by your own symmetry. You are your own compass for horizontal directions. And because left and right are defined by your body, they swap when you imagine your body in a different orientation. When you mentally rotate yourself 180 degrees around the vertical axis, your body's left-right axis flips relative to the room. What was on your left is now on your right, but up and down, which are defined by gravity, don't flip. The Earth didn't rotate with you. So when you look at a mirror and imagine yourself turned around inside it, you're asking, if I were over there, facing back at myself, which direction would be my left? And the answer is, the opposite of your current left. Because you've mentally rotated your body, and left-right is relative to your body. But then you ask, if I were over there, which direction would be up? And the answer is, the same as your current up. Because up is not relative to your body. It's relative to the Earth, and the Earth didn't change. This is the asymmetry that creates the paradox. You're mixing two different reference frames, body-centered directions and Earth-centered directions, and treating them as if they're the same kind of thing. But they're not. Let me give you another way to think about it. Imagine you're an alien who doesn't have a symmetrical body. Maybe you're shaped like a cone, with a point on top and a wide base on the bottom. You have no left or right side. Your body is rotationally symmetrical around the vertical axis. You can spin around and you'd look the same from every angle. Now you look in a mirror. Do you see a left-right flip? No, you can't, because you don't have a left or right. You see a front-back flip. The point that was facing forward now appears to face backward in the reflection. But there's no confusion about left and right because those concepts don't apply to you. But if you're a human with a bilaterally symmetrical body, you do have left and right, and you use them constantly to navigate and describe the world. And so when you see an image of a body, even your own body reflected, you immediately assign it left and right, based on where you imagine its hands would be. And that assignment depends on how you imagine the body oriented. The mirror isn't doing anything special to left and right. You are. You're the one creating those labels, projecting them onto the image, and then getting confused when the labels don't match the way you expect. Now let's talk about the most beautiful part of all this. The mirror reveals something profound about how your mind works. It shows you that you're constantly building a model of the world, and that model includes not just objects and positions, but perspectives and identities. When you look at the mirror, you don't see photons bouncing off a reflective surface. You see a person. You see yourself, but as if you were someone else. You create an imaginary other, a second consciousness looking back at you from behind the glass. And you do this instantly, automatically, without any effort or awareness. This is what humans do. We see faces and we create minds. We look at patterns of light and shadow and we see intention, emotion, perspective. We can't help it. It's so deeply wired into us that we do it even when we know, intellectually, consciously, that there's no other mind there. You know the reflection isn't thinking. You know it's not a separate being, but you can't stop your brain from treating it like one. And because you treat it like a separate being, you imagine what it would be like to be that being. You imagine their perspective. You imagine their left and right. You imagine how they would see you. And in doing that imagining, you mentally rotate yourself, and that rotation creates the flip. This is empathy. This is theory of mind. This is the cognitive machinery that lets you understand other people, predict their actions, cooperate and communicate, and build societies. It's one of the most powerful abilities humans have, and the mirror paradox is what happens when you point that ability at yourself. You try to model yourself as an other. You try to take a third-person perspective on your own first-person experience, and your brain gets tangled up because you're both the observer and the observed. You're trying to be in two places at once, in your body and in the imaginary body behind the mirror. And the only way your brain can make sense of that is to imagine one of you rotated relative to the other. And the rotation it picks, the vertical rotation, is the one that feels most like walking toward the mirror, passing through it, and turning around to look back. It's spatial. Kinesthetic. It maps onto the movements you make with your actual body. When you think about walking into another room and facing back the way you came, you rotate around your vertical axis. So that's the rotation your brain uses when it models the mirror self. But here's the profound thing. None of this is necessary. The mirror doesn't require you to imagine another self. It doesn't demand that you model it as a person facing you. That's something you add. That's something your mind creates out of pure, powerful, beautiful habit. You could look at the mirror and just see patterns of light. You could see it as pixels of color, arranged in a shape that correlates with your body but isn't your body. You could see it the way a camera sees it, as data, as information, with no perspective, no left or right, no self looking back. But you don't, because you're human. And being human means seeing people everywhere, even in your own reflection. It means creating stories about perspective and identity and what it would be like to be someone else. It means taking the raw material of light and building from it a social world, a world of minds and intentions and relationships. The mirror paradox isn't a bug in your perception. It's a window into how perception works. It's a glimpse of the machinery underneath, the way your brain takes ambiguous sensory data and constructs from it a coherent, meaningful experience. And the construction it builds is so seamless, so automatic, that you mistake it for reality itself, until something like a mirror shows you the seams. Let me tell you about another moment when I saw those seams. I was teaching a class at Caltech, and I was trying to explain symmetry in physics. I was talking about how the laws of physics don't change if you flip everything left to right. It's called parity symmetry. If you ran an experiment, and then you ran the exact same experiment but with everything mirrored, every particle on the left now on the right, every rotation reversed, the experiment would play out the same way. Nature doesn't have a preference for left versus right. Except it turns out it does. There are certain particle interactions, weak nuclear force interactions, where parity symmetry is violated, where left and right are not equivalent. This was discovered in 1956, and it shocked the physics world because we'd assumed symmetry was fundamental. But here's what's important. Even though the weak force violates parity, the violation is tiny. For almost everything in your everyday life, for mirrors, for light, for the way objects move and bounce and reflect, left and right are completely symmetrical. The universe, at the scale you experience it, truly doesn't care about left versus right. And yet you care. Deeply. You have a left hand and a right hand, and they're different to you. You have a dominant hand. You have a side of the bed you sleep on. You give directions using left and right. These directions are meaningful to you because they're anchored in your body, in your experience, in your sense of self. So there's this beautiful tension. The universe is, mostly, symmetrical, but you are not. You live in a symmetrical world but experience it asymmetrically because of your body's structure. And that asymmetry is what makes left and right feel real and important, even though they're arbitrary. The mirror reveals this tension. It holds up the universe's indifference to left and right, the perfect symmetry of reflected light, and forces you to confront it with your own deeply felt sense that left and right matter. And in that confrontation, you see the flip. You see the mismatch between the world as it is and the world as you experience it. And this, to me, is one of the most important things you can learn, that your experience is not the same as reality. Your experience is a model, a construction, a story your brain tells based on sensory input, prior expectations, and evolutionary pressures. That doesn't make it false. The model is incredibly useful. It works. It lets you navigate, survive, thrive. But it's not complete. It's not objective. It's a human-centered slice of a much larger, stranger reality. And when you see the seams, when you catch your brain in the act of building the model, like you do with the mirror paradox, you get a glimpse of what's beyond the model. You see the photons, the geometry, the pure information before your mind shapes it into left and right, self and other, person and image. That glimpse is clarity. It's freedom. It's the beginning of real understanding. Now I want to give you something practical, something you can do right now, today, to start seeing these seams in your own perception. Stand up. Face a mirror, a real one, or just imagine one. Raise your left hand. Watch the reflection raise what looks like its right hand. Feel that familiar flip. Now here's the practice. Catch yourself in the act of imagining the rotation. Notice the split second when your brain says, "That's me, but turned around." Notice the moment when you project personhood onto the image, when you create the imaginary other in the mirror. It happens fast. It's subtle, but once you start looking for it, you'll see it. You'll feel it. There's a moment, a tiny, almost imperceptible moment, when your mind does the work of flipping, of comparing, of creating left and right for the reflection. And when you catch that moment, you realize, I'm doing this, not the mirror, me, my imagination, my mental model. That realization is powerful because it extends beyond mirrors. Once you start noticing how you create perspective, you start noticing it everywhere. You start seeing how much of what you call reality is actually your mind's interpretation. Someone doesn't respond to your text, you feel ignored. But wait, did they ignore you, or are you projecting intent onto their silence? Are you creating a story about what their silence means, just like you create a story about what the mirror image's right hand means? You face a choice, left or right, option A or option B. But wait, are those the only options, or are you imposing a binary frame onto a situation that might have more dimensions? Are you stuck in left-right thinking when maybe there's an up-down or a front-back you haven't considered? You look at someone else's life and think, they're so lucky, or they have it easier. But wait, are you imagining yourself rotated into their position around the vertical axis, keeping your up and down the same? Are you assuming their reality works like yours, just flipped? Or are they oriented in a completely different way that you can't see from your perspective? These are mirror questions. They're questions about where you end and where the world begins, about what's objective and what's projected, about which parts of your experience are reflecting reality and which parts are reflecting your own mind back at you. And the practice, the daily, moment-to-moment practice, is to keep asking, to stay curious, to notice when you're flipping, when you're rotating, when you're creating an imaginary other, and then getting confused by your own creation. Here's another practice. Teach this to someone else. Find a friend, a kid, a co-worker. Tell them you want to show them something strange about mirrors. Guide them through the thought experiments I've shared with you. Have them raise their hand and watch the reflection. Ask them which direction flipped. Ask them why left-right and not up-down. Then walk them through the rotation. Have them imagine spinning around their vertical axis, then around their horizontal axis. Show them that the flip changes depending on which axis they choose. Watch their face when they get it. When they see that the mirror isn't doing the flipping, they are. That moment, when someone else sees it, is pure joy. Because you're not just sharing information, you're sharing a perspective shift. You're helping someone escape a confusion they didn't even know they were in. You're showing them the seams in their own perception, and in doing so, you're giving them a tool for seeing more clearly. And here's why teaching matters. When you explain something to someone else, you understand it at a deeper level. You have to find the right words, the right examples, the right metaphors. You have to anticipate their questions and confusions. And in doing that work, you clarify it for yourself. You see it from new angles. You discover aspects of it you hadn't noticed before. I've been teaching physics for decades, and I learn something new every time I explain a concept to a student, because their confusion points me toward something I've been taking for granted. Their questions reveal assumptions I didn't know I was making. And when I find the explanation that works for them, when I see the light bulb turn on, I feel it turn on in me too. So teach, share, explain, not to show off, not to prove you know something, but to deepen your own understanding and to free someone else from confusion. That's what this is about. That's what thinking is about. Not accumulating knowledge, but sharing clarity. And while we're talking about practice, here's one more. Start asking, where's the mirror here? When you encounter confusion in other areas of your life, you have a conflict with someone. You think they're wrong, they think you're wrong. Where's the mirror? Are you both looking at the same situation from opposite perspectives, each seeing the other as flipped, each thinking your own orientation is the correct one? Can you step back and see that both of you are just different viewpoints on the same neutral geometry? You feel stuck in a pattern. Same problems, different day. Where's the mirror? Are you rotating around the same axis every time, trying the same mental flip, expecting different results? What if you rotated around a different axis? What if you approached the problem from up-down instead of left-right? You judge yourself harshly. You see flaws, mistakes, failures. Where's the mirror? Are you looking at yourself as an imaginary other, comparing your inside experience to your outside appearance, creating a flip that makes you seem worse than you are? What if you looked at yourself without the rotation, without the projection, without creating that second self to judge you? These questions won't solve every problem, but they'll help you see where you're adding complexity that doesn't need to be there, where you're creating confusion by imposing a frame that doesn't fit, where you're flipping something in your mind and then blaming reality for the flip. The mirror paradox is a metaphor for so much of human experience. We encounter a neutral world, and we project onto it our own structure, our left and right, our front and back, our sense of self and other. And then we forget we did the projecting. We mistake our map for the territory. We think the flip is out there when it's in here, and the beautiful thing, the hopeful, powerful, liberating thing, is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you catch yourself creating the flip, you start to see all the other flips you create, all the other ways you impose your perspective on reality, and then forget you did it. And that awareness doesn't make you detached or cynical. It doesn't mean nothing is real. It means you have more freedom, more choice, more power to navigate your experience consciously instead of being buffeted by confusion you don't understand. You're not trapped by the mirror. You're not gaslit by the universe. You're just human, with a human mind, doing what human minds do. Building models, creating meaning, projecting perspective. And now you can see yourself doing it. You can watch the construction in action. You can appreciate the incredible sophistication of your own perception, while also recognizing its limits. That's wisdom. Not knowing everything, but knowing what you're doing, knowing how your mind works, seeing the tools you use to navigate reality and understanding when those tools are helping and when they're hindering. Let me bring this back to where we started. I told you about the kid with the toy car, how he saw the reflection as just the same car over there. No flip, no confusion, just a straightforward reflection. And I wondered, when did I lose that simplicity? When did I start seeing a flip that isn't there? The answer is, when I learned to model other people, when I developed theory of mind, when I started imagining what it's like to be someone else, to see from their perspective, to have their orientation. That's a developmental milestone. Kids learn it around age 3 or 4. Before that, they're egocentric, not in a selfish way, but in a literal way. They can't easily imagine someone else's viewpoint. They assume everyone sees what they see, knows what they know. But then something shifts. They start to understand that other people have different perspectives, that someone standing across from them sees the room from a different angle, that someone can look at the same object and see it differently. And that's when mirrors start to feel flipped, because now when you look at your reflection, you don't just see an image, you imagine a perspective, you create an other, you model the reflection as having its own viewpoint, its own left and right. So the confusion, the paradox, is actually a sign of cognitive sophistication. It's proof that you can imagine multiple perspectives at once, that you can mentally rotate yourself into someone else's position, that you have empathy in the deepest sense. The kid with the toy car will grow up and start seeing the flip. And when he does, it'll mean his brain has developed a powerful new capability. He'll be able to understand people better, cooperate more effectively, navigate social situations with more nuance. But he'll also lose something. He'll lose the simplicity of seeing things as they are, without the overlay of imagined perspectives and projected identities. And maybe, just maybe, by understanding the mirror paradox, by seeing how and why the flip happens, he can get some of that simplicity back. Not by regressing to a childlike egocentric state, but by evolving to a more conscious, aware state, where he can hold both perspectives at once, the direct experience of the reflection and the imagined experience of the other. That's the goal. That's the transformation I'm offering you. Not to choose between seeing the flip or not seeing it, but to see it and understand it, to experience it and also to see through it, to live in your human perspective, while also recognizing it as a perspective, not as absolute truth. This is what it means to be awake, to be conscious, to be free. Not to escape your human nature, but to understand it so deeply that you can work with it instead of being confused by it. You started this video thinking mirrors were weird. Now you know, mirrors are perfectly simple. They reverse depth. That's all. The weirdness is in you, in your magnificent, powerful, sometimes confusing mind that builds entire worlds out of reflected light. And there's nothing wrong with that weirdness. It's what makes you human. It's what lets you connect with other people, imagine other possibilities, create art and science and meaning from the raw material of sensation. The confusion isn't a flaw, it's a feature. It shows you how hard your brain is working, how many layers of interpretation and imagination it's adding to create the seamless experience you call reality. And now that you see it, now that you understand it, you have a choice. You can keep living inside the model, taking it for granted, getting confused when it seems to contradict itself. Or you can step back, see the model as a model, appreciate it for what it is, and navigate reality with more clarity and less confusion. The mirror isn't lying to you. The universe isn't tricking you. You're just noticing the moment when your mind builds perspective from nothing. And that noticing, that awareness, is the beginning of real understanding. You don't need to take anyone's word for anything. You can figure it out yourself. You can see through your own illusions. That's what thinking is. That's what freedom is. You came here confused about mirrors. But what you're leaving with is something bigger, a lens for seeing how your mind works, a practice for catching yourself in the act of creating reality, a reminder that you're more powerful than you think. Not because you control the outside world, but because you have insight into your own inner world, into the machinery that builds your experience. And that insight doesn't just apply to mirrors, it applies to everything. Every moment when you feel confused, when reality seems contradictory, when the universe seems to be breaking its own rules, that's an opportunity. An invitation to look closer, to ask what you're assuming, to notice which axis you're rotating around, to see where you're projecting and where you're perceiving. This is the practice of a lifetime. Not something you do once and then you're done, but something you return to again and again. Every time you look in a mirror, every time you encounter confusion, every time you want to see more clearly. If this video helped something click for you, if you felt that little spark of clarity when the paradox dissolved, do me a favor and hit the like button. It tells YouTube that this kind of deep, weird exploration is worth showing to more people. And if you want more videos like this, where we take something you thought you understood and reveal the hidden strangeness underneath, subscribe. Because there's so much more to explore. Every assumption is a door. Every paradox is an invitation. Drop a comment and tell me, what's another everyday thing that you've always found confusing but never questioned? I read every single one, and honestly, your questions are the best part of this whole thing. They show me what people are curious about, where the confusion lives, what matters to you, and that helps me figure out what to explore next. Thanks for sticking with me through this. It means something to me that you spent this time thinking deeply about something as simple as a mirror. Most people don't do that. Most people accept confusion as just part of life. But you didn't. You wanted to understand, and that curiosity, that willingness to look closer, to question, to think, that's the most valuable thing you have. Now go look in a mirror and notice. Notice the moment when your brain creates the flip. Notice the imaginary rotation. Notice the other you're projecting into the glass. And smile because you just caught yourself building reality. You just saw the seams in your own perception. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. And that's a gift. That's clarity. That's freedom. Welcome to seeing more clearly. Welcome to understanding your own mind. Welcome to the beginning of real wisdom.